We begin today the Gemara at the bottom of Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis, where it says Rabbi Yehuda Handua. This Gemara talks about the halachas of acquiring an Evet Kanani. Rabbi Yehuda Handua ger she'en lo yorshin hava. He was a ger and he had no inheritors. So cholash, he was very sick. All marzutre l'shiyulebe. Marzutre went to be mevaka chaylim to see how he's doing. Chazye, he saw the takafle al metuve, that his world fell upon him, meaning he was very sick, he was mamish agaisis, about to die. So Amalei la'avde, so this Rabbi Yehuda Handua had an Evet, the Evet Kanani. So Mazutra says to the Evet Kanani, shloifli misanoi, take off my shoes off for me, v'amtinu lebeisa, deliver it to my house. The reason he did this was because the moment this Rabbi Yehuda Handua passes away, so then this Evet would be Zeichen himself, he'd be free. So he wanted that at the second he passes away, he's already serving Marzutre, which is a kinyan of Chazakah, as we said before. Chazakah, when you use the Evet for serving you, and then he's going to be kainim without any break in between for the Evet to be Zeichen himself. And what was the case over here with this Evet? Iked Amri Godel Have. There are those that say that this Evet was a Godel. And if he's a Godel, so he has a mind of his own, and if you're not going to use him right away without a hefsek, he'll be Zeichen himself. So what happens? Zeh Pirish L'Misa, Rabbi Yehuda Handua passed away, and Zeh Pirish L'Chaim, and Mazutra was alive, and he was Zeiche in this Evet that's a Godel. Others say that the story was cotton Abba. This Evet was a cotton, and even though he's a cotton, and L'Chaira Evet a cotton doesn't have a das of his own to be Zeiche in himself, but nevertheless, the moment his master dies, even an Evet cotton is Zeiche in himself. U'deloika Abishol, and not like the opinion of Abishol. As the Gemara brings it, Tanya, we learned in the Braise, ger shemeis. A ger passes away, and then he has no inheritance, or bizbezu, Yisrael, nechasav. So Yidden are coming and are taking and are being zeiche from his possessions. V'hoye ben avodim ben gedolim ben ketanim. And amongst them you have avodim, and they're both gedolim and ketanim, kanu atzman, b'nei chayrin. They will automatically acquire themselves the moment their master passes away, so no one could be zeiche in this evet. Not gedolim and not ketanim. So over here you see, like this opinion that Gemara said before, that even Evet cotton will be Zeichen himself. But Abishol says, Gedolim kanu atzma b'nei chayrin. Gedolim, Evet Gadol has a das, he'll be Zeichen himself to be free. Ketanim kol hamachzik ben zacha ben. A cotton, Evet cotton will never be Zeichen himself, even later on. So therefore, you don't have to run to be Zeichen him right away, that he shouldn't be Zeichen himself. Even later on, you can be Zeichen him. This is the Gears in the Gemara here, and this is Rashi's Pshat in the Gemara. But most Rishonim disagree. Most Rishonim are actually goyis in the Gemara that he was an Evet Katan, and the Gemara is saying that this fits even with Abishal's opinion. So a few pshatim for this. One of the pshatim that Rabbeinu Tam says in Taisvus is, even according to Abishal, that the Evet will not be, the Evet Katan that is, will not be Zeichen himself, but nevertheless, the Marzutra rushed to make sure that the second Rabbi Yehuda Handua passes away, he should be Zeichen in him, because Adarabah, since this Evet Katan cannot be Zeichen himself, that's all even more of a reason that other people will want to try to be Zeichen him before someone else, because they know that this Evet Katan can't be Zeichen himself. So that's why he rushed to make sure that he's going to be the first one to be Zeichen him. Going back to the Mishnah. Mishnah spoke about an Evet acquiring himself back, getting his freedom. So there's with Kesef or through Shtar. So the Mishnah brought two opinions about this. First is Rab Meir. What did it say in the Mishnah? V'koines atzmai bekesef. And how's the kesef? Rab Meir says bekesef al yedei acherim. That it has to be someone else that gives the money to the master to free him. And then he says when it comes to shtar, so he can receive his own shtar, the shtar shichra that is from his master to be freed. So the Gemara will explain what is the difference between kesef and shtar. Why kesef al yedei acherim and why shtar could he take himself? The kesef al yedei acherim in. So it sounds like Rab Meir is saying, when it comes to kesef, only somebody else could give his master money to free him. Avaloi al yedei atzmai, but he could not free himself with this money. So what is the case over here when someone else is freeing him with this money? Is someone going over to the master and freeing the Evet without even telling or asking the Evet about this? So Mechti, let's see, this can't be, because Shamayne Leile Rab Meir, we know that Rab Meir's opinion about an Evet being freed, the Omar, he said, that for a slave to be freed from his master, it's something which is a loss for him. And the reason is, Rashi says, if he's an Evet that's owned by a Kayin, so while he's by a Kayin, he could eat a Trumeh from the Kayin. If he's an Evet that's owned by any Yisrael, he could marry a Shivcha Kananis. And now he becomes a Yid and he doesn't have those options available for him anymore. So therefore it's a loss for him. Ve'tanina, and we learned in the Mishnah, Zachin la'adam shalei b'fanav. When you do something for someone, if it's a benefit for him, so you could do it not in his presence, without asking him, and it takes effect for him. But if you're doing something which is a loss for someone, it has to be in his presence, or it has to be with his consent, or with his permission. So over here, when it says kesef al-yidei achedim, it can't mean that someone else is doing this without the das of the eved that's appointing this person to do so. So the pshat must be over here in the Mishnah midaitai, that this other person that's freeing this eved, it's with the das of the eved. He's telling him, go and free me from my master. Now, so now what's the chiddush of the Mishnah that someone else could come and do this for the eved? Why not? The eved is appointing him and asking him to do this for him. So, but the chiddush over here is al yidei achedim, in that he can only do it through someone else al yidei atzmai loy. But he, the eved, cannot give any money to his master to free himself. That's the main chiddush, the fact that he can't do it himself. Now, Alma, what do I see from this? Why can't the eved free himself with his own money? Ein kinyin le'eved b'loy rabbi. Because an eved cannot own any money without it belonging to his master. Whatever he owns goes to his master, so he can never free himself with his own money. That's the chiddush that we're learning out of here. Says the Gemara, but if that's the pshat regarding kesef, when it says Aidei Achedim, Ihachiyeh Meseife, what's the next halacha that Rab Meir says? B'shtar al Yidei Atzmai, that when it comes to him receiving a shtar shicha from his master, he can receive it himself. So what does this mean? Al Yidei Atzmai in, so he could receive this shtar shicha himself. Al Yidei Achedim Loi, seemingly over here the same thing. No one else could receive the shtar shicha for him. He has to take it himself from his master. The question is, if we're saying by kesef, we said that someone else is freeing him with him appointing that person. So same thing by the shtar. If he asks someone else to be his shliach to receive the shtar shichra for him, why can't he be free this way? If you'll argue and say, what did Rab Meir mean to say when he said by shtar that he could be freed by receiving the shtar himself? He didn't mean only if he receives it himself. Over here regarding shtar, what he meant to say is af al yidei atzmai, that by shtar he can receive it himself, he could ask someone else to receive the shtar from him, both. And then the chiddush of the Mishnah over here would be the fact that someone else could receive the shtar for you. There's no reason why not. You appoint him as a shliach, he can receive the shtar for you. The main chiddush over here that Rab Meir was saying is that he could receive the shtar himself. What's the chiddush? The gitoi v'yadoi ba'em ke'echad. The master owns the eved, a kinyan aguf. He has no hand for himself b'chal to receive the shtar. How could he receive the shtar to be kainet and then free himself? He doesn't have any rishus to get it. The answer is you're going to have to say that it happens at the very same second. As he receives the shtar shichror, it's at that very moment that he gets free, then he has the hand to receive it to be free. Both come together. We had this in the Gemara in Gittin as well. Huh? No, but the shliach is the hand of the shliach doesn't belong to the master, so you don't need it. The shliach is an independent person, and he's receiving it b'shlichus of the eved, and the shliach frees the eved through this. But the hand of the eved, which is kinyan aguf, he belongs to his master mamish. How could he receive the shtar in his hands to free himself? The Achreinim explains, there's a famous k'tzais that explains this concept of gitiv yadim bon kechad, because logically it's very hard to understand. So don't you have to have first your independence a second before to be able to then receive it, to be kained, and only then could you become independent? So it doesn't really work. What does this mean that it's bon kechad? So the k'tzais says, because the kinyan by a shtar shichror, the same by a get also, is not a real kinyan. V'haraya, you can free the eved or divorce the isha even against their will. So it can't be a real kinyan. It's just a nesina that has to be placed into their hand. So if it's a nesina, so then it goes at the very same second. The Torah considers it to be a nesina into their hand, and they are free. That's the chiddush of Gita v'yadei bon kechad. So the Gemara asks on this, but if you're telling me this is what Amei meant to say, that by shtar, the eved could receive it himself, he could appoint someone else to receive it for him. But v'leitani yachi. We learned not so in a brayse. The Tanya, we learned in a brayse, Rab Meir says, "B'shtar al yidei atzmai v'loy al yidei acherim." When it comes to shtar, he could free himself by receiving the shtar, but nobody else could receive it for him. Divrei Rab Meir. So what's the pshat in this? If it's midai toy, so then why can't someone else receive the shtar from him if you're appointing someone else to be a shliach? Omar Abaye, Abaye answers, we must say, shaloi midai toy, that this Mishnah, both regarding kesef and regarding shtar, it's shaloi midaita. Someone else would be giving this kesef to your master even without the consent of the eved, or receiving the shtar even without the consent of the eved, and therefore, now we have to understand how does it work by kesef. If it's shaloi midaita, we say before Rab Meir said that it's a chayv, it's a loss for the eved. How could someone free the eved with kesef without his consent? Shani kesef, but kesef is different than shtar, because hoyel v'kani le bal karchai by kesef. When he's bought by his master, so he's acquired to his master also against his will. That when the master gets the money, he becomes an eved, even if it's against the will of this eved Kanani. So the same thing, makni le bal karchai. The kesef has the same koyach, just like by the kinyan, it goes against the will of the eved to be makni him back to himself to get his freedom. Even if he considers it to be a loss and it's bal karchai, the koyach of the kesef by a eved Kanani works even bal karchai. Fragt the Gemara, why shouldn't we say the same svara regarding shtar? Even though usually we have a rule, you can't do anything for someone which is a loss for him, but why shouldn't we make the same comparison regarding shtar? That just like you acquire an eved kanani through the kinyan of shtar, and it's against the will of the eved kanani, it's the same. It should work when you want to free the eved kanani, even if it's against his will. It should work. Says the Gemara, you can't compare the shtar of the kinyan to the shtar of the shechrar. Hai shtar l'chod, v'hai shtar l'chod. In the shtar of the kinyan, it's written one lashon that it's for kinyan, and then the shtar of shechrar is a different shtar altogether. It's a shtar for shechrar, so you can't learn out one from the other. So we should say the same thing, that here the kesef is used for a kinyan, here the kesef is used for a shechrar. How am I comparing the two? And so the Gemara, tiva miyachadu, but it's the actual money is the same money, so it has sort of the same koyach in it to create a kinyan through the very same money. So therefore, we do compare and learn out from the kesef of the kinyan to the kesef of the shechrar that it can be bal karchach. So that's the pshat of the Mishnah, that by kesef al yidei acherim it could be bal karchach. We learn it out from the kesef of the kinyan, but shtar only the eved himself could be kain himself because of gite v'yade ba'an ke'echad. But someone else cannot be kind of this evet for himself through shtar, because we're talking of here when it's bal karchach, and no one else could receive it for you against your will. Rava says, again, based on the same shot that it's speaking about over here, shaloi midaita, someone else is receiving it, shaloi midaita of the evet. But Rava gives a different explanation for the difference between kesef and shtar. Kesef, kabbalas rabbi garmalai. When an eved is freed through kesef, what causes the freedom? The freedom over here is not caused by that other person that's freeing the eved. It's really caused by this, that the master receives this money, and he automatically, when he receives this money in exchange for this eved that he owns, so he goes free. The whole halacha that Rab Meir said, Ein chavin la'adam shaloi b'fanav, is when someone else is coming and doing something for you that's a loss for you, so that person can't do it for you without getting your permission or being appointed by you. But over here, when it comes to the master, so the master is not being appointed by anybody. When the master receives the money, the master takes the money for his own sake, because he'd rather have them. The master decided, I'd rather have the money. It's more important to me, the money, than my eved that's going to work for me. So therefore he decides to exchange. He's taking the money. He doesn't need the pchalal the reshus of the eved. So therefore by kesef, since it's all happening through the master, the eved gets freed automatically without his consent pchalal. That's how the whole kinyan of the shikhr of the kesef works through the master himself, the kabbalah of the master. Shtar kabbalah sacherim garmaloi. A shtar, you have to receive that shtar from the master. So either the eved himself receives it, or someone else receives it in the place of the eved. So it's the kabbalah of the shtar that's causing the whole freedom. So nobody else could receive this without the permission of the eved. If it's a loss for the eved, it's a chayiv, you're going to have to be a shliach of the eved. And therefore by shtar, it does not work al yidei acherim. The next thing in the Mishnah, the other opinion was, v'chachamim ma'imrim b'kesef al yidei atzmai. Chacham said the exact opposite. That when it comes to kesef, over there it works like the atzmai, and when it comes to shtar, over there it's like the acherim. So the Gemara will explain the opinion of the chachamim. The kesef like the atzmai, so chachamim say that by kesef has to be when he receives it himself. So again, by kesef like the atzmai if he receives it himself, he becomes free. If someone else gives the kesef, not receives, that is, he gives kesef to the master, someone else gives the kesef to the master, then he will not be free. But why not? Even if the case in the Mishnah over here is that someone else is giving the money to the master without being appointed by this eved. it still should work. Because Mechti, let's see, Shemainu L'hu Rabbanan Da'amri, we know that the Rabbanan's opinion is Zechusu Sheyetze Mitachas Yad Rabbi L'cheiros, that it is something which is a benefit for the slave to leave his master. They disagreed with Rab Meir. It's considered to be a schus forever to be free. V'tanina, we learned in the Mishnah, Zachal Adam Shlei B'fanav, Ve'en Chavan Loi Ela B'fanav. If it's a schus, you can do it without the presence, without the consent of this person, and only by a chayv do you need his rishus. So over here, why is it saying that the kesef is dafka yidei atzmai? Even over here, if we're speaking about that, it was without the rishus of the evet shloi midaitoi, but it should still work yidei achedim. Now, so if you'll explain that the pshat and what the Chacham was saying in the Mishnah is, Mai al yidei atzmai, af al yidei atzmai. The Chacham were saying, in contrast to what Rab Meir said. Rab Meir said that the kesef is only al yidei achedim. Chacham are coming to add, no, that by kesef, of course it works al yidei achedim, but their chiddush was that it works even through the kesef of the eved himself. And what's the chiddush in that? The Kamash Malon, the chiddush they were arguing with Rab Meir, they were saying, the yesh kinyin le'eved b'loi rabbi, because Chachamim hold that a slave could own money that belongs to him and not to his master, and therefore he can give that money to his master to free himself. We'll see soon in the Gemara on Amud Beis how that is. So that was the main chiddush of the Chachamim regarding kesef. So really with kesef, it could be both Aydei Achedim and Aydei Atzmai. If so, what's the next point that Chachamim say? Shtar Aydei Achedim. By a shtar, receiving the shtar, only someone else could receive the shtar for him to free him, not the eved himself. V'lo Aydei Atzmai. Not through himself. But the question is, why not? Why can't he receive the shtar himself? V'ha'kaim along. Don't we know the halacha is? And Rashi says here, the Gemara is saying this kaim along because this is ma'asim b'chol yom. We see that this happens all the time, that if an eved wants to free himself, he receives his shtar shichror himself. And the reason is, as we said before, gitoi v'yodoi ba'an kechad. The shichror, the shtar shichror that he gets into his hands, and the independence of him having it in his hands all comes together at the same time. So why would Chachamim say that shtar has to be al yidei achedim? Now, if you'll argue and say, just like we said regarding kesef, that when it said al yidei atzmai, it means af al yidei atzmai. So my al yidei achedim, af al yidei achedim. Here regarding the shtar as well, he can receive his shtar himself because of gita v'yadei ba'an kechad. Someone else could receive the shtar for him as well because Chachamim say that it's a schus. So it works both. And v'ha kamashvalan, and the chiddush over here is the zechus ule'eved sheyetze miyad rabbi l'cheiros. So when it says b'shtar yidei achedim, it means af yidei achedim. And the main chiddush Chachamim were trying to say is that someone else could receive the shtar for the eved because it's a schus, it's a benefit for the eved to go free, and therefore even shaloi midaitoi, they can receive the shtar for him. But if that's the pshat in our Mishnah, in the opinion of the Chachamim, it comes out that the halacha regarding kesef and shtar is the same. Himself and someone else, both, regarding kesef and regarding shtar, could free him. So yachi narvinu v'nesninu. Let the Mishnah say it all, that Chacham's opinion is all together as one. Big kesef, ubishtar, bein al yidei achedim, bein al yidei atzmai. That for both of them you can free himself and someone else could free him. Why is the Mishnah saying that Chacham's opinion is kesef al yidei atzmai and shtar al yidei achedim? Says the Gemara, Elo, we're going to have to say the pshat over here in the Mishnah is as follows. Bekesef, when the Chachamim saying the Mishnah regarding kesef, so Chachamim said bekesef al yidei atzmai. What did they mean when they said bekesef al yidei atzmai? Really, he meant to say bein al yidei achedim, bein al yidei atzmai. Like we said before, the Chachamim were coming to add to Rab Meir. Rab Meir said that only achedim could receive the kesef for you, but you can't. The eved can't own his own kesef. Chachamim came and said no, bekesef al yidei atzmai means also al yidei atzmai. Okay, now over here, what the Gemara means to say is this opinion of the Chachamim regarding kesef, that it's both al yidei achedim and al yidei atzmai, the same applies to shtar. That by shtar it's also al yidei atzmai, gita v'yadi ba'an ke'echad, and also al yidei achedim because it's a schus. That's the opinion of the Chachamim. And then when the Mishnah continues and says b'shtar al yidei achedim v'lo al yidei atzmai, that when it comes to shtar only someone else could receive yishtar, and you yourself cannot receive yishtar, that's a different opinion. That's not Chacham speaking anymore. That's Rab Shimon ben Elazar. This is Rab Shimon ben Elazar saying that by shtar, a evet cannot receive his own shtar. The Tanya, as we learned in the Brayso, Rab Shimon ben Elazar, Oime, af b'shtar al yidei acherim, but v'loy al yidei atzmai. When it comes to shtar, only someone else could receive his shtar for him to free him, and not himself. The point is, Rab Shimon ben Elazar does not hold of the concept. The Gemara said, Gitoi v'yodei bon kechad. So how could a evet free himself? He doesn't have the independence to receive this shtar. Now the Gemara concludes, according to this, so it comes out, V'shalosh machloikes bedover. There's really three different opinions over here in the Mishnah. There's the opinion of Rav Meir, and we understand Rav Meir says that by kesef it's dafka yidei acherim, and by shtar it's dafka yidei atzmai. The Gemara before explained why that is. When it comes to the opinion of the Chachamim, when Chachamim start off saying b'kesef al yidei atzmai, all Chachamim mean to say is that by kesef it's also al yidei atzmai. And for the very same reason that we say by Kesef Tzal Yidei Atzmai, we're going to say by Shtar Shichur the same thing. By both Kesef and Shtar Tzal Yidei Atzmai and Al Yidei Achedim. And then comes Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Rab Shimon ben Elazar actually holds that both by Kesef and by Shtar, it must be Al Yidei Achedim. By both of them. By Kesef has to be Al Yidei Achedim because he can't be Zoich in his own money. By Shtar it must be Al Yidei Achedim because he doesn't hold of this concept of Gita V'yodei Bon Kechad. That's the pshat in the Gemara here. Taisus discusses that in the simple pshat over here, it's not really understood why the Gemara had to say that there's a third opinion here. The Gemara could have just said that the whole thing is Rab Shimon ben Elazar. The Gemara could have said when it says in the Mishnah, Chachamim Maimrim, B'kesef al yidei atzmai, b'shtar yidei acherim, lav dafke Rab Shimon ben Elazar holds that just like by shtar, it could only be al yidei acherim, so too by kesef, it could only be al yidei acherim. Maybe b'negei to kesef, Rab Shimon ben Elazar holds that kesef could be al yidei atzmai, that Evet could be zoich in his own money to free himself. It's only by shtar that he has a problem with the concept of Gita v'yodei bon kechad. So Taisus says, there's two pshatim in Taisus. One of the pshatim in Taisus is, the Gemara does not want to say that the Loshen v'chachamim maimrim is Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Chachamim maimrim is not Rab Shimon ben Elazar. We paskin like the Chachamim and we don't paskin like Rab Shimon ben Elazar. So therefore, the first part, the Chachamim maimrim b'kesef yidei atzmai, that's Chachamim speaking. And then when it says b'shtar al yidei acherim, that does not fit with the Chachamim's opinion. That we're going to have to say that it goes according to Rab Shimon ben Elazar. The Chachamim hold Gita v'yodei bon kechad. And the reason the Gemara is saying that is, like Rashi said, Ma'asim b'chol yom. We see that this is the minig b'payil that we follow Gita v'yodei bon kechad, that Evet could receive the shtar himself. So when it says in the Mishnah shtar al yidei acherim, it must be that it's a das yachid, it's Rab Shimon ben Elazar that held that we don't say Gita v'yodei bon kechad and we don't paskin like Rab Shimon ben Elazar. That's where the Gemara comes to a conclusion that there's three different opinions here in the Mishnah. Omar Rabbe, the Gemara spells out over here, but Rab Shimon ben Elazar's opinion. My time of Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Why does Rab Shimon ben Elazar say that an Evet cannot receive his own shtar? Answer is Gomar la mi isha. To free an Evet, we learn out that when he receives his shtar shikhr, it's similar to a isha that receives her get. Ma isha achi yetzi get l'rishus sheni shaloi. The whole get, the din of the nisina of the get is you have to give it into the hands of the isha, has to leave the possession of the husband into the possession of the isha. Af eved nami achi yetzi get l'rishus sheni shaloi. So to by a eved, the get has to leave the rishus of the master and come into the rishus of the eved. So by a eved that becomes a problem. By a isha, the husband doesn't own the guf of the isha. She has her own yad to receive her get. So even without gitay v'yadei ba'an ke'echad, as soon as the get comes into the hand of the isha, it's her hand, and she's kind of the get. But by an eved, if you want to have the same thing accomplished like an isha, that it should leave the rishus of the master and go into the rishus of eved, Rab Shimon Elazar holds it's a problem. We don't say gitay v'yadei ba'an ke'echad, so only someone else that's appointed as a shliach by the eved will be able to free this eved. The Gemara here is actually going to ask now any boy about this. Says the Gemara, boy, Rabbi asked about this, that Rab Shimon Elazar says that an Evet cannot receive his own get. Someone else has to receive it for him. Evet kanani ma'oshi yasa shliach lekabel gita miyad rabbi. Could an Evet even appoint now? Now it becomes a problem. Is it even possible for an Evet kanani that cannot receive his own get? Could he appoint someone else to be a shliach to receive it from his master? What's the problem over here? One second. Right. Do I say kiv in the gomar la mi isha? Do I say that since there's this gzeira shava we just said, we compare the eved to an isha, and therefore I say ki isha, that the halacha is the same like an isha, just like an isha could appoint someone else to be your shliach. That's learned out from the pasuk v'shulcha mi beisai, that you could appoint a shliach lekabbalah to receive her get. The same thing is with an eved, even though the eved cannot receive his own get. he could appoint someone to be a shliach. Even though usually the rule is a person cannot appoint someone else to be a shliach to do something that he himself has no ability to do. But over here, because we compare to an isha, we say that he could appoint a shliach. Oidel me isha di matzi mekabeles gita shliach nami matzi mishavya. Isha, since she could receive her own get, so she has the ability to appoint someone else in her place for what she could do. But Eved, the loy mekabel gite, Eved cannot receive his own get. Shliach nami loy matzi mashvi. He can't appoint someone else to be a shliach for this. So Taisus over here discusses the question that from the Gemara before, it seemed like the Gemara was accepting the pashtus in the lashon of the Mishnah that shtar al yidei acherim, that someone else, if you appoint someone else midaitai to be your shliach, for sure he can receive the get for you or the shtar shikra for you. Over here, all of a sudden, the Gemara has a shaila about this according to Reb Shimon ben Elazar. There are two pshatim in Taisus about this. And the first pshat, Taisus says that what the Gemara is saying over here now is that when we said before that someone else for sure could receive the get for you, midaitai, that's if that person went and you did not appoint him as a shliach. It's midaitai, but not with the din of shlichus. He's going and doing it without you telling him, be my shliach, with the kayach of shlichus. What the Gemara is saying is, there's a svara to say that if he's doing it as a shliach, because the whole basis of shlichus is that you have to be in the place of the mishaleach, it's going to make it worse. Because now that you appointed him, you can't. He's doing it only because he's your shliach. But if you can't do it yourself, you can't be your shliach to do it. If he's going to go and accept it on his own, then he will be able to accept it for you. But shlichus makes it worse. That's the Gemara's svara over here. There's another pshat in Taisus, but this is one of the pshatim over here in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, Basa de Baye Hada Pashta. After Rabbi asked the shaila, so he resolved it and said that we learn out la mi isha ki isha. We learn out the gzeir shava from a isha that receives her get, just like the isha receives her get, she could appoint a shliach, and Evet could also appoint a shliach. Says the Gemara. And a chanami, but the gzeir shava says that agam it's not daime. Still, the gzeir shava says that misvara tak it's not daime, but nevertheless the gzeir shava says that we still compare them that an Evet could receive the get. But the Gemara asks, if so, shouldn't this Gzeir Shava teach me here that I have a concept of shlichus where the Mishaleach can't do it, and the Shliach could still be a Shliach of the Mishaleach? That's what this Gzeir Shava shows me. So for El Hadam Ravuna Bereder Rav Yeshua, so Ravuna Bereder Rav Yeshua said, Hani Kani Shluche the Rachmanin, the Kayanim doing their Aveda in the Beis Hamikdash, bringing the Karbanis. So whose Shluchim are they? So this is the Shaila the Gemara asks in the Darim. Regarding the Kainim, when they bring the Karbanis, are they the Eibish's Shluchim? Or are they the Shluchim of the Yidden that are giving them the Karbanis to be makr for them? And the Nafkamina Rashi says is, regarding a neder, if you made a neder that you can't have a nor from this Kain, could the Kain do this Aveda for you or not? If he's your Shliach, he can't. If he's a Shliach, the Rahman is the Eibish's Shliach, he can do the Aveda for you. That's what Rashi's pshat over here in this Gemara is. Taisus has a different pshat, that it's the shaila, the way it's brought up over here, is not exactly the same as the Gemara of Nedarim. But Rashi over here says this is the shaila legabi, the isser of a neder, if a kohen can do the aveda for you. So Rav Yeshua said it must be that the shluchim, the kohenim being shluchim, they're the Eibush shluchim. Why? If you're going to say that the din of shluchis here is that the kohen is doing something as a shluchis for the yid that's not bringing these karbanes, so then how could there be a concept of shluchis here? Mi ikemidi the anan leimatzinan of dinon. Do we ever have in shluchis such a thing that you, the mishaleach, cannot do it himself? And ve'inu matzi avdi, and the shliach could do it for the mishaleach. The whole concept of shlichus is that the shliach takes the place of the mishaleach, not something that the mishaleach can't do. But now asks the Gemara, v'loi, there's no such a thing. We just said v'ha'avda, when it comes to a slave that's appointing a shliach to receive a shtar shechra for him, the iyol ematzi mekabel gite. He cannot receive his own shtar shechra. V'shliach matzi mashvi, and he could appoint a shliach to go and receive it for him. So there is such a concept. So the Gemara says, no, it's not exactly the same thing. V'loihi, this is not a comparison, because Yisrael, loy shaychi b'toyres karbonis klal. A Yid has no ability at all to serve, to do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash at all. He's a zar. He doesn't have it's awesome for him to do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash at all. So over here, he's not in this Torah of karbonis at all. It can't be that the kohen is his shliach to do it for him. But Evet shayich begitin, even though Evet cannot receive his own get, But an Eved does have a shaykhis to the union of Gittin, meaning he could receive someone else's, another Eved, his get, his shtar shikhr, he could receive, even though he can't receive his own. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, nirin advarim. It would appear to be that the halacha is sha'eved mekabel gitoi shel chaveiroi miyad rabbi shel chaveiroi, that the Eved could receive for another Eved, from his master. He could receive his shtar shikhr for him. Avalem miyad rabbi shelo, you can't receive from his own master. So what does that show? That the only problem that the Eved has is not that he's not shaykhing the Torah of shtar shikhr. He is. But I could receive for someone else. By himself, there's a technical problem. He doesn't have his yad, he doesn't have his independence to receive it. So since the etzem, the shtar, the Eved that isn't the Torah of this shikhr to free himself with a shtar, so therefore he can appoint another shliach to do it for him. And we learn it out from a isha. Okay, going back now to the halacha of kesef. What did it say in the Mishnah? So the Chacham in the Mishnah said that even when an Eved is freeing himself with the own kesef that he has, but it has to be someone else that gave him this kesef, and then he has now kesef that doesn't belong to his master. Rab Meir said, no, the Eved can't own any kesef that doesn't belong to his master, so he can't free himself. So the Gemara is going to explain what's this machlekes, whether Eved could own his own money. Shall we say that the argument is, as it sounds simply here, that Rab Meir's opinion is, ein kinyan le'eved b'loi rabbi. That an Eved does not have a kinyan without his master owning it. So he can't free himself, even if someone else gives him money. And the same will apply. A wife also doesn't have a kinyan without it going to her husband. But Rabbanan say, Yesh kinyan le'eved b'loi rabbi. An Eved could own things without his master owning it. And there's also a kinyan for Isha without her husband owning it. That's the machlokes here. So Amarabe, Amarav Sheishes, no, the pshari is different. The kula alma, everybody agrees, as we know the halacha always is, ein kinyan le'eved b'loi rabbi. An Eved doesn't own anything without the master owning it. Ve'ein kinyan le'isha b'loi baila. And a wife doesn't own anything without it going to the husband. Right? So Rashi says this is not really the place to talk about the din of isha and baila. It's a side thing that comes up over here. What's the machlokes here? The aknile acher money. Someone comes and gives the Eved money. And tells him clearly, I'm only giving you this money with the condition, it should be yours on the condition that your master should not get it. So Rab Meir says this tonight doesn't work. Because the moment he says to the Eved, you should be kind of this money, immediately the master is kind of this money. And then when he comes and wants to tell him a condition that al-manas, that the master shouldn't get it, it's too late. Like klum kamar. This t'nai doesn't work. It goes right away to the master. The Rabbanan say, if you say this t'nai, this condition, so the condition works, the Eved is kainit, and he's kainit for himself. The whole kin is al-manas, that his master shouldn't get it. Okay, so this is the pshat of, the pshat over here, is this in the Gemara? Rav Sheishis. Rav Sheishis is pshat in the machlokes of Rab Meir and the Rabbanan. But Rabbi Elazar says another pshat in their machlokes, kol kai gavne, the way we just described it, when he made a simple t'nai that your master should not be zeichen the money that I'm giving you. The kula alma le pligi, nobody will argue. The kani eved, the kani rabbe, that the eved is kainet, and it goes all automatically to the master. The t'nai that you make is too late and it's worthless. Over here, the case is going to aknile acher moneh. Someone else is giving the slave a moneh, and he's telling him a stronger tonight. Meaning, I'm not even really giving you the money to keep for yourself at all. I'm giving you the money just to be used to free yourself. So over here, in such a case, it's a much stronger t'nai. The Eved doesn't really even own it, b'chlal. He just has it for this purpose. So Rab Meir says that I still will say in such a case that because he's giving the Eved the money to be kained, even though he's being kained for a certain purpose, but saf he has a kinyan in it, the master gets it right away. So the moment he says you're kained, so he's kained and the master gets nothing. But the Rabbanan say lididei nami ole kani the kamakni le. Even the Eved himself never really has a full kinyan in it. When do I say that Rav and the master gets it? If the Eved owns it, so then the master gets it. But over here, the Eved owns it only if he's using it to free himself. If he's not using it to free himself, he doesn't own it. So therefore, the master can't get it from the Eved. And over here, the Tanai will work that the Eved will have his own money to free himself.